It is said that on one occasion an ignorant person abused him. The Buddha listened on silently, and when the person had stopped abusing, the Buddha asked, "My son, if a person does not accept a present, what will happen to it?" His adversary replied, "It remains with the person who has offered it." The Buddha then said, "My son, I do not accept your abuse." In the previous video, we have seen how strict Brahminical laws, use of iron in the Gangetic plains, growth of new agricultural economy, and patronage of Vaishya class of Varna system to Buddhism in the post-Vedic times led to the rise of Buddhism under Gautama Buddha. Now we shall find out how and why Gautama Buddha started his journey towards nirvana and spread of Buddhism. Gautama Buddha or Siddhartha was born in 563 BC in a Sakya Kshatriya family in Kapilavastu, which is situated in the foothills of Nepal. Gautama's father seems to have been the elected ruler of Kapilavastu and headed the republican clan of the Sakyas. His mother was a princess from the Kosalan dynasty. As Gautama Buddha belonged to a noble family and was born in a republic, he also inherited some republican sentiments. From his early childhood, Gautama showed a meditative bent of mind. He was married early, but married life did not interest him. He was moved by the misery that people suffered in the world and looked for a solution. At the age of 29, he left home. He kept on wandering for about 7 years and then attained knowledge at the age of 35 at Bodh Gaya under a pipal tree. From this time onwards, he began to be called the Buddha or the Enlightened. Gautama Buddha delivered his first sermons at Sarnath in Benares. He undertook long journeys and took his message far and wide. He had a very strong physique, which enabled him to walk 20 to 30 kilometers a day. He kept on wandering, preaching and meditating continuously for 40 years, resting only in the rainy season every year. During this long period, he encountered many staunch supporters of rival sects, including the Brahmanas, but defeated them in debates. His missionary activities did not discriminate between the rich and the poor, the high and the low, and man and woman. The Buddha proved to be a practical reformer who took note of the realities of the day. He did not involve himself in fruitless controversies regarding the soul, Atman, and the Brahma, which raged strongly in his time. He addressed himself to the worldly problems. He said that the world is full of sorrows, and people suffer on account of desires. If desires are conquered, nirvana will be attained. That is, man will be free from the cycle of birth and death. Gautama Buddha recommended an 8-fold path, Astangika Marga, for the elimination of human misery. This path is attributed to him in a text of about the 3rd century BC. It comprised the right observation, right determination, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right exercise, right memory, and right meditation. If a person follows this 8-fold path, he would not depend on the machinations of the priests, and yet he will be able to reach his destination. Gautama taught that a person should avoid the excess of both luxury and austerity. He prescribed the middle path. The Buddha also laid down a code of conduct for his followers. The main rules in this social conduct are: 1. Do not covet the property of others. 2. Do not commit violence. 3. Do not use intoxicants. 4. Do not speak a lie. And 5. Do not indulge in corrupt practices. These teachings were common to the social conduct ordained by almost all religions of the time. But what made Buddhism special and led to its spread? Buddhism does not recognize the existence of God and the soul meaning Atman. This can be taken as a kind of revolution in the history of Indian religions. Since early Buddhism was not enmeshed in the claptrap of philosophical discussion, it appealed to the common people. It particularly won the support of the lower orders as it attacked the Varna system. People were taken into the Buddhist order without any consideration of caste. Women also were admitted to the Sangha and thus brought on par with men. In comparison with Brahmanism, Buddhism was liberal and democratic. Buddhism made a special appeal to the people of the non-Vedic areas where it found virgin soil for conversion. The people of Magadha responded readily to Buddhism because they were looked down upon by the orthodox Brahmanas. Magadha was placed outside the pale of the holy Aryavarata, the land of the Aryas, covering modern Uttar Pradesh. The old tradition persists, and the people of North Bihar would not like to be cremated south of the Ganga in Magadha. The personality of the Buddha and the method adopted by him to preach his religion helped the spread of Buddhism. He tried to fight evil by goodness and hatred by love. He refused to be provoked by slander and abuse. He maintained poise and calm under difficult conditions and tackled his opponents with wit and presence of mind. The use of Pali, the language of the people, also contributed to the spread of Buddhism. It facilitated the spread of Buddhist doctrines among the common people. Gautama Buddha also organized the Sangha, or the religious order, whose doors were kept open to everybody, irrespective of caste and sex. The only condition required of the monks was that they would faithfully observe the rules and regulations of the Sangha. Once they were enrolled as members of the Buddhist Sangha, they had to take the vow of continence, poverty, and faith. So there are three main elements in Buddhism. They are the Buddha, Sangha, and Dhamma. As a result of organized preaching, under the auspices of the Sangha, Buddhism made rapid strides even in the lifetime of the Buddha. The monarchies of Magadha, Kosala, and Kausambi, and several republican states, and their people adopted this religion. Gautama Buddha passed away at the age of 80 in 483 BC, at a place called Kusinagar, identical to the village called Kasya, 200 years after the death of the Buddha. The famous Maurya king, Ashoka, embraced Buddhism. This was an epoch-making event. Through his agents, Ashoka spread Buddhism into Central Asia, West Asia, and Sri Lanka, and thus transformed it into a world religion. Even today, Sri Lanka, Burma, Tibet, and parts of China and Japan profess Buddhism. Although Buddhism disappeared from the land of its birth, it continues to hold ground in the countries of Southeast Asia and East Asia.